Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk, up and rolling, along with Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. It is Wednesday, baby, not just the middle of the week. Wednesday now means midweek mailbag, and we're going to be taking listener questions tonight on the mailbag. How are you today, Vince?
I'm doing great. It's a great Wednesday, halfway through more than halfway now that the day is over. But it's not over yet. We still have Mailbag Wednesday here for IB
That's right,
Sports,
baby.
IB Nation Sports Talk. But things are
right.
good. Things are good. Starting to settle into the new job. I'm fired up about Saturday and everything that goes along with it. I mean, there are very few people on this planet that I would rather spend 10 hours in a car with than you.
Than you, baby. That's right. That's right. Driving to Columbus. That's
right.
Of course, total hours there and back. But
Correct.
Yes.
But it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. You know, the college football atmosphere. This is arguably the biggest game of the year, frankly. And, we've been just looking forward to. I remember we were talking about this game before the bowl game. It's like, Marcus Freeman, his first, home game or his first game as the head coach is obviously going to be the bowl game. But then the regular season game, he has to go back to Ohio State, blah, 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 blah. But we've been talking about this game forever. And we finally get to see it come to fruition. We get to see all of these players and all of these things that we think we are going to see, but we get to see if it actually happens. So really looking forward to this weekend and everything else with it. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, this is a place that I've been wanting to go, see a football game for a long time, and not really knowing that this was going to be on the schedule until really a few years back. It's like, do I try to go or, whatever. I kind of always, even though I don't like either Ohio State or Michigan, had kind of thought that it'd be cool to maybe take that in at some point over there. I'm glad I don't necessarily have to do that. I don't have to worry about buying a ticket, just get to go and cover it. So I'm looking forward to that. It is Mailbag Day. So for our live viewers in the chat, shoot us your questions, whether it's about this game, bigger picture questions for the season, whatever it happens to be. And also don't forget, of course, you know what I'm going to say, smash the like button, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all that different stuff helps us out. It'll help boost this as well. We've had a great week so far with the podcast. Lots of people listening. We had Ohio State trolls in here last night, Vince.
They're coming back. Don't worry. Yeah. They'll be here.
Yeah, waiting for some to sneak in here tonight. Before we get going, I do want to mention Tyler Evans. He said he lost his grandfather today, and his grandfather was the reason. He's a Notre Dame fan, and we love talking Irish breakdown. So thank you guys, Tyler. Condolences from all of us to you and your family, and thanks for stopping in here tonight. Yeah. We'll be talking a little Notre Dame football. Maybe it'll help you to kind of be around your Notre Dame family and friends here tonight. But deepest condolences from all of us.
No doubt. We always try to be an escape for everybody from their, actual lives. So hopefully you can escape a little bit and just kind of find some solace in the fact that we're going to talk some college football and some Notre Dame football.
Did you say lives or wives?
Ooh, no comment. On the off chance this will be the first episode that she ever watches, I am not commenting on that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, looks like we've you're going to start up, right?
I'll star them.
Okay, you star them, and I'll go through and see what we got. I'll just throw this one up there. I haven't even read it yet, but we'll go ahead and start with this. So, Benjamin says, I saw an interview with Coach Freeman. He said he is focused on Monday through Friday and on game day. Is he going to let the coaches coach? Your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, he lets based on everything we've seen at practice, he fully lets his coaches do his thing. He is not looking over shoulders. He is not micromanaging. Now, that's while they're out on the field. I assume that's the way he is. I mean, that is the personality that he has to begin with. He doesn't come across as that kind of sort of control freak, just the sort of person he is with the relationships and everything else. So I fully think that he's going to let his coaches coach. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, I do. I think that he hired these guys for a reason. He didn't hire a bunch of yes men. I mean, he hired guys that he trusts to do the job, and he's going to let them do the job. And I think he's let them do their job up to this point, and I don't see that changing on game day. I really don't. I mean, he's going to make the big decisions, obviously. He's going to be the head coach. He knows the buck stops with him, and that's totally fine. But I think he's going to allow his coaches to coach. He's not going to micromanage, especially the play calling, whether it's offense or defense. He's not going to micromanage Al Golden. He's certainly not going to micromanage Tommy Rees. He's not an offensive guy. He spent a lot of time learning the offense, becoming aware of the offense, and all of that. But he's not going to micromanage these guys. He has imparted what he wants this team to be, and he's told us that, right? He wants to stop the run. He wants to be able to run the ball, etc. That's their charge. Make this happen,
right?
And he trusts his guys to do that, and I trust him if he trusts his guys. So, yeah, he didn't hire yes men. That's for darn sure.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. I just saw one that was directed at you. I'll let you have this one. David Carpenter. Vince, how many pancakes by the Notre Dame offensive line Saturday?
That's a really good question.
I thought he was at first going to ask, how many pancakes are you going to eat on the way to Columbus? But
I mean, if you're
I don't even know there's an IHOP on the way. But
if you're bringing them, I'm eating them. I think we can all appreciate that. But
yeah,
I think Notre Dame's offensive line is going to have a good day. I'm a little nervous about Jarrett Patterson not being 100%. I fully intend him to play the whole game, but I'm a little nervous about him not being 100%. So that might bring the number down a little bit. Flat. It depends. It's funny because pancakes are very subjective, right? It's because they fell down. Is that a pancake? Is it because do you have to fat them? Do you have to land on top of them for it to be a pancake? You know what I mean? So
right.
I would say I'll put the over under at like 6 or 7 in that neighborhood. Like true, I'm on top of the guy, pancaking him kind of a thing.
What's average for a game? Like if you ever sat and looked, it's like
not.
We see them, but like you said, it's like not every great block turns into a pancake.
Absolutely correct.
Right?
I mean, you can drive a guy 7 yards off the ball, and that's a fantastic block. You don't need to pancake them. Now, that's what makes the highlight reel. I mean, I get that.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be a pancake. And I the names of the guys that Notre Dame's going up against, these guys are good players. I mean, they're not just going to take it. It's not going to be like USC in 2017, where they're just like, we give up, white flag. It's not, that's not going to happen. But I still think the offensive line is going to have a good day.
It's an interesting matchup to me, Notre Dame's offensive line versus Ohio State's defensive line, because you've got, it's like three former 5-star recruits on that line. They're fairly young guys as well. None of them stood out last year. Like one of them lost some weight, the other gained some weight because they thought that maybe he was a little bit too finesse. But as of right now, there is none of these guys on Ohio State's defensive line have played like a star. They were a decent sort of run-of-the-mill defensive line last year. Now, Jim Knowles thinks that they're going to be a lot deeper, like they can play 10 to 12 guys. Notre Dame is obviously going to have a deep line as well. What's interesting is this wasn't necessarily their worst position group last year. I still think their linebackers were.
Agreed.
But again, with that many 5-star guys, they really seem to kind of play average, and Larry Johnson was the only position coach who Jim Knowles kept on the staff, the defensive line coach last year. So you've got a returning guy with guys who are supposed to be talented coming out of high school versus the return of Harry Hiestand. We've seen firsthand what those improvements are going to look like. So this is a really, really interesting matchup to me. If Notre Dame can win up front at the point of attack, and Marcus Freeman talking about the roll and stop run and all that stuff, that's what can really keep Notre Dame in this game, if Notre Dame is winning that battle. I know they want to be disruptive, Ohio State and all that kind of stuff, but Notre Dame's winning up there. It's going to be a good night for Notre Dame.
No question about it. If they can control the line of scrimmage offensively, even more so than defensively. Now, it's going to be very, very important that Notre Dame controls the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. But if I don't know, now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know that I would want the offense more than the defense to control the line of scrimmage. But either way, that's where this game is going to be won or lost. I mean, what does that margin of victory look like in the trenches. Ohio State has the best, receiving core in the nation. There's no question about it. But if Stroud is getting hassled and harassed all night long, it's going to make things real difficult. If Notre Dame can hold on to the football, run the ball, dominate the offensive line or with their offensive line, that keeps the ball out of the hands of Stroud and that offense. So both things would favor Notre Dame. They need them both. They really do. I can't pick one over the other because I think they're both equally important, but you're going to need them both if you have any prayer of winning this game or keeping it close.
Yeah. David Carpenter, how many rushing yards do you think Notre Dame has to hold Ohio State to in order for Freeman to think Notre Dame did a good job? This is another interesting one to me because like Travion Henderson, over 1,200 yards on the ground last year, but of course, they went to a Rose Bowl. They didn't go to the playoff, but they still, and they didn't play in a Big Ten championship game. I guess, at the end of the day, he played in 13 games and just under 100 yards per game, basically, and he's their main guy. Stroud's not going to run a bit, that much. It's not like Tyler Buckner. So, I don't know. I think if they can keep him somewhere.
I got a number in my head. I'm curious to see where you're at.
I'm thinking like 120 and under, somewhere around there.
Okay.
What do you think?
I was going to say 125.
125? Okay. Yeah.
If they can, because you're right, the quarterback is not going to be really in play when it comes to running the ball, and sacks count. So I'm hoping that Notre Dame can get their hands on Stroud a couple times and get him down to the ground. And so if that total is 125 or less, I like Notre Dame's chances. I really do. And that includes the sack yardage because that's going to be important, right? Yeah. And their only threat in the backfield is their running backs. So, yeah, I think if they can hold them to 125 or less, I think that looks really good for Notre Dame. Now, it can't just be they got 125 because that's all they wanted and they're just throwing the ball all over the yard.
Yeah.
It can't be that either.
Exactly.
Right. But, that's the number that I would have circled in my head.
But, they weren't the two biggest games for CJ Stroud. Two of, I think, probably his top 4 games or something like that, passing wise, were the 2 games they lost as well, to Oregon and to Michigan. So those numbers can get skewed by what you're talking about. Like they can still obviously come up with yards. It's just a matter of how they go about getting them. But I think if there's somewhere in that 100 to, as you said, like 125, I'd live with that as well. All right, where was that other one? I was just looking at. Sean, great name, says, how did Ohio State's O-line handle pressure last year? Will Al Golden send blitzes more this year than in past years? I don't know, like, comparative to Notre Dame, because Marcus Freeman blitzed last year. It's not like Marcus Freeman wasn't blitzing. I just say Ohio State only gave up 17 sacks last year. And again, we're not talking about a mobile quarterback. Like if Notre Dame's offensive line only gives up 17 this year, one, it'll be because the line is better and you've got guys like Fisher and Alt on the outside, but you've also got a mobile quarterback. So that factors into it as well. 1, escapability, and 2, the fact that he's running more. So the fact that Stroud doesn't run and they only gave up a little more than a sack per game last year, I'd say they handled it pretty well.
No, they did handle it pretty well. And, their schedule wasn't crazy difficult as far as pass rush is concerned. But I will also say that there are holes in this offensive line. They can give up pressure, and they've got some guys starting in different places. And this isn't a top 10 offensive line by any stretch, in my opinion. So will Al Golden send blitzes? He's going to send pressures. There's no doubt about it. And he's going to overload one side, or he'll twist and stunt and all kinds of different stuff. Yes, he's going to bring pressure. There's no question. You're not going to be able to just sit back and let Ohio State do what they want to do and expect to be able to defend them. You have to force the issue to a degree if you want to have any success defensively against this offense. You have to. You've got to get Stroud off of his game in order to affect what they want to do offensively. So in order to do that, you've got to send more than 4 at times. Now, there's going to be times where Notre Dame's going to be able to get pressure with 4, and they'll be able to drop the rest and be fine. but you're going to have to bring 5, sometimes 6.
You got to make him uncomfortable.
You have to, and you have to mix it up too. You got to come from a 3-down look. You got to come from a 4-down look. And I know people are going to lose their minds when we start talking about 3-down versus 4-down based on some things that happened early last year and things like that. But you've got to do both. You have to be multiple and keep Stroud guessing. You have to. Otherwise, they're going to have their way with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree with that. Sid Irish, is it wrong I'm more nervous than excited? I mean, you should be nervous.
Yeah, you should be. No doubt. Now, look, Sid, you're one of the most negative people, and I mean this respectfully. You're one of the most negative people that we have here, but I agree with you 100%. And it's going to ramp up for me as I get to the horseshoe and I start going up the elevator to the press box and I get settled in and watch kickoff. Like,
eat your 6 hot dogs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to start getting that feeling that nervous feeling in my stomach because it all leads up to this. And what's it going to look like? I'm incredibly nervous about this game. No doubt about it. Am I confident in a lot of the things that we've talked about? Absolutely. Is that equal a victory? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, but I'm going to be incredibly nervous.
Yeah, there should be a lot of nerves for this game.
Yes.
I mean, they are an underdog going on the road and all these different things. We know all the details by now. Dean Bambino, 23. We've got warriors on this team that are ready to die for each other and the coaches. When's the last time we had this much energy from everyone?
It's been a while. I mean,
it has. Like, that 2012 team is one of the first that comes to mind.
To them, but their swag was mostly defensively. I felt like, I feel
That's
like
true.
I feel like
but they had a really good offensive line too.
They did. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Golick and Watt and Martin and that whole crew. Yep.
Yeah, I haven't remembered this kind of energy around the whole program, and a lot of it's because of a new coach and what he brings to the table and all of those different things. I mean, the talent on the roster is very similar to what it was last year, right? So I'm very excited for it. I'm pumped up for it. I think they're excited about it. The energy is high. It hasn't been this high in a really, really long time, at least since I've been covering the team from a entire program standpoint, right? So let's see if it pays off. I mean, that's the big thing. Hype and energy is great, but if it doesn't pay off,
got to back it up.
What is it? Yeah, exactly.
Got to back it up at the end of the day. That's right. All right. Let me see. I kind of got lost here in my queue. David, how many points does Notre Dame need to score to win? Saying one more point than Ohio State doesn't count. I think they're going to probably need to score, I'm going to say minimum of 35 points.
Yeah, I think mid-30s is accurate.
I mean, think about last year's game. Yeah. And I was talking on tomorrow's show, we're going to have the Ohio State writer on, and I actually recorded that today. And it just kind of struck me as weird, because openers, I think that there's still enough unknown that's going to factor into, I think, this being a closer game than a lot of people think, for one. Because think of last year at Florida State. We base most of the opinions that we have based on things that happened last year. And we weren't expecting Florida State to be a good team. They at least showed that they were early on better than they were the year before. Now, they didn't turn out to be a great team, and Notre Dame went on to an 11-1 record. But look at the score that game produced and the fact that it went to overtime. I think Notre Dame not only is going to need to, I do think that they can score some points Saturday night.
I think they will too, and I think 35 is a good number. In my bold predictions, I said that Ohio State's not going to score past 30. So if Notre Dame gets in the 30s, I feel very good about where things are going to be. I do think points are going to be scored in this game, though. I mean, I think the over-under was 58 or something crazy like that. I can't remember. You had it at one point in one of our over-under questions. It was 58 or 60 in that neighborhood.
I think it was 58.5. It's even gone up. It's even gone up.
Has it gone up?
Because that's the line is obviously going the other way against Notre Dame, but the over-under is going up as well, which means that everyone's betting, Like when it was 15.5, 16.5, the money was going to Ohio State. So the line starts going up
Sure.
and people were hitting the over at 58.5, and that's gone up at least a point. I haven't checked. I don't think I checked today, but the last I looked, it was 59.5. So I think
That sounds
60
right.
is an easy number. Cause like even, and
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you think about 60, if it's 40-20, that's 60 right there.
Yeah.
And I think that
Absolutely.
Notre
I
Dame is
think
going to
that's an easy
contribute more.
I think that's an easy over, frankly, and I would
Yeah.
take that over. There's no doubt about that.
Like I said, I parlayed mine on Notre Dame in the over.
Smart.
So hopefully that pans out. Let's see. Um, how about this one right here? Ed, excluding sacks, which messes up the statistic, in my opinion. Notre Dame needs around 170 to control the game. Less than that, they'll need Tyler Buckner to throw 300 plus 35 points amount needed to win. Yeah, so he kind of agrees 35
Yeah.
is the
I
ballpark that we're talking about. I think it probably still at least 170. I think that would be my minimum 170. What do you think?
Absolutely. I when I was thinking about, okay, if Notre Dame is going to win this game, okay, no, again, is there a path for Notre Dame to win? Sure, there's a path, but I think that path is a lot of things firing on the right cylinders, and I think 200 yards rushing is right around where they're going to need to be, give or take 10 or so. Like I just think 200 is a good number to where they need to be, because you figure they want to run the ball. Estime is going to get a bunch of carries. I think Tyree is going to get a bunch of carries. I think Tyler Buckner is going to have 10 plus carries. I think there's going to be a lot of carries to go around, and getting up to 200. I think that's where they're going to need to be if they're going to quote unquote control the line of scrimmage and all of those different things. If they can go 200, I think that's a really good place for Notre Dame to be. 200 on the ground, 200 in the air. It's very balanced. What does that look like? We'll see. But for whatever reason, that's kind of what's been floating around in my head the last couple of days. So, 200, I think Notre Dame's in decent shape at that point.
Yeah. Well, and again, Ohio State's going to base a lot of how they're going to defend Notre Dame on what they saw from Tyler Buckner last year. So as I kind of switch it into the next question now, where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? There's so many questions in the queue here.
I know, right? I've just been starring like crazy, man. There's some good questions in there, though.
I
For
know.
sure.
I know. There's a lot of good ones. I was trying to kind of piggyback it with this one.
There,
Where did
I
it
had another
go?
one just for fun.
I'll just throw one in here so we're not stalling and looking around, and I'll find another one here. Jay Clampett Investments. Outside of receiver and quarterback, what position groups do you feel Ohio State has the advantage? I'd probably give them a slight nod at running back just because
From
Travion
an
Henderson
upper
is a
echelon.
known commodity. Yeah.
I'll
Like
give you that.
they've got depth issues like Notre Dame, but like it would be like, obviously, if Notre Dame had Kyron Williams coming back, that's kind of what
Sure.
Travion Henderson is. We all think that Notre Dame's running backs can be good, but none of them have produced over 12.
Right.
It's like, when's the last time a Notre Dame back produced over 1,200 yards in a season? So I would give them the slight nod just because you know what you're going to get from Henderson.
I would say I give them the nod from if we're just doing top back, you know what I mean? If it's Tyree versus Henderson, okay, I'm going to give Ohio State the nod. But if you're talking about depth, I like Notre Dame's depth better at running back. I think they've got more horses that they can go to than Ohio State does. And I mean, you took the two spots that I think that Ohio State dominates Notre Dame or has an advantage in, is wide receiver and quarterback. I don't know that they have an advantage anywhere else, to be honest with you. Now, it's a big advantage, okay? Wide receiver and quarterback's a big advantage. All right. I think Notre Dame is better at offensive line. I think they're better at tight end. Okay. I think, like you said, I'll give Ohio State the nod from a top echelon running back standpoint. But if you go over to the defensive side of the ball, definitely linebacker for Notre Dame. I think the defensive line has more proven commodities than Ohio State. And the secondary, look, Notre Dame has two potential All-Americans in the secondary. Does Ohio State?
See, that's the thing. Like Ohio State and Jim Knowles with this 4-2-5, it's a safety-driven defense is what he likes to say. So they're going to play three safeties out there, but none of those three safeties are the caliber of a Brandon Joseph, so they're
Right.
going to be three safeties. It's an interesting matchup. I think that is going to affect Michael Mayer, for example. But again, it's like Michael Mayer against those safeties. I still like that matchup better, even though you've got, a safety potentially out there defending him. I mean, he has shown, that he can match that up. And obviously, if you put him on a linebacker, I'll take that any day of the week. So yeah, I mean, their linebackers I don't think are as good as Notre Dame's. I don't think their defensive line is not as good as Notre Dame's. I think Notre Dame's offensive line is going to be better. I would at least give it a push, just again, because we haven't seen it in action and all that. Again, like they've got a higher end guy with Paris Johnson and all that stuff. But what does that say? What is
I had to read it like 14 times to get it, but Ted Brenner says
big
OSU
play
has
advantage.
Big play
I see
advantage.
now.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They have 100% have big play advantage, but
Sure.
that wasn't the question that was asked. It was what position group did they have the advantage? Yes, they had the big play advantage because they have the advantage at quarterback and wide receiver. That's why they had the big play advantage. Absolutely. No question. Notre Dame can't give up a bunch of big plays and expect to win this game. No doubt about that.
Yep. Leopard Irons, what's the first play we run from scrimmage? I'm going play action, hitting Mayer on a post route. What do you think, Vince? First play Notre Dame tries to hit Ohio State with.
If I'm Tommy Rees, I'm going with bread and butter, and I'm going with an RPO. And it's going to be it's going to be a read to the running back, right? And then it's going to be, do I throw it or do I keep it?
Right.
So triple option RPO. That's the way I see the first play going down. If they don't do that, it might be a play action, but I don't think it's going to go to Michael Mayer because everybody in the stadium thinks the ball is going to go to Michael Mayer. So if they do play action, I think it might. How about this? How about play action to Tobias Merriweather or something like that? You know what I mean? Something that they're not expecting at all.
Somebody they haven't seen yet.
Because I do think that based on what is on film, right, for Tyler Buckner, they're going to be stop the run first. Okay. Maybe they go man to man to start off with. I don't know. We'll see. But Jim Knowles likes to put his corners out on an island. Let's do it.
See, that's a chess match, though, too.
Yeah, 100%.
Like how much you're willing to play man-to-man with a quarterback who can burn you like Tyler Buckner. That is a huge chess match. You're going to make them have to make those kind of decisions as well. And like, Jesse was doing his breakdowns last night. He thinks more 12 personnel is the way to go because he thinks Notre Dame has a decided advantage up front and that, they can, hit them with the run better with that, along with Tyler Buckner, and two, that because of Buckner's arm, that he can still beat them in the passing game, whether it's a one-on-one matchup or not.
Absolutely. Honestly, some 12 or some 22 personnel, I think would be a lot of fun too, because you've got some versatility with those running backs. You can put them in the slot. You can move them around. And look, don't sleep on Kevin Bauman, okay? Don't sleep on tight end number 2 because he didn't have a bunch of catches last year, but the ones he did were impactful, okay? I don't think, and we've talked about this in the past, I don't think they've utilized the second tight end enough in the pass game in the past.
Yeah.
A lot of pass. I don't think they've utilized them enough. I think that could be a secret weapon for this offense going in because Bauman is a good receiver of the football. Big-bodied guy. Obviously, we know he can block and do all of those things attached, but he's not going to get a lot of respect from the Ohio State defense. And why should he, based on what he's done in the past and based on who the number 1 tight end is? I think Bauman could have a game. We'll see.
I mean, everyone's keyed up on 87, but there are other guys who are going to be going out and have the ability to hurt you as well. And they don't all have to be home runs, and Bauman is one of them. Right. Bauman has really good hands.
Yeah.
And he can do both. He can play both Y and U, and just like Mayer can. And I think that your answer I love as to what's going to happen on the first play. RPO, if it's there, you keep. If it's not, you take a shot. And I think that's the way to go because again, they're keyed up on the run because of Buckner and everything else.
Well, and that's the thing. In an RPO situation, you can't be wrong. If you read it correctly, you can't be wrong. And that's the best part.
You just got to read it.
You just get into the rhythm. You start doing your thing because the whole point of an RPO is you make the defense wrong. Whatever they decide to do, they're wrong. Okay, so you can either hand it off, you can throw it, you can keep it. I mean, there's a million different things you can do. So I love that as a possibility. We'll see what happens.
David wants to know, what's the turnover margin need to be for Notre Dame to win?
I think it needs to be at least +2 for Notre Dame, if not +3. +3 was the first number that came into my head, and I thought maybe that might be a little bit greedy. But
if they're +3, they're going to be in the game at the end.
Yes, agreed. Absolutely. No question. And, I think this defense is going to be hawking. I think they're going to be ball hawking. I think Ohio State's going to test them deep, and I hope they test them to the side of Brandon Joseph, and I hope they test them to the side of Cam Hart, because if they do, I think you can get some turnovers in that regard. And I also think that defensive line is going to come in and just they're going to be trying to strip the ball while trying to tackle. You know what I mean? Well, and they're good at it.
And this slipped by me last year until I was looking at the stats the other day. Isaiah Foskey forced 6 fumbles.
Yeah, he's really good at it.
6 fumbles.
Really good.
That's that strip sack move, basically. And that's what that is all about. And
grab him with your left, you come down hard with the right. I mean, that's a tough move, and he's a big, strong dude to have coming down at the ball. So I agree with you. I think +2, +3 is where they need to be. +3 is kind of where I'm leaning. I feel really good about where they are in the fourth quarter if they're +3.
Yeah. And just talking about Foskey's going to draw a lot of attention as well, but there are so many other guys on that defense who can also beat you. I think it's, I just think it's fool's gold for defenses to completely try to scheme Michael Mayer out of the game. And I think it's fool's gold to try to completely scheme Isaiah Foskey out, because there are other guys who can hurt you on each side of the ball for Notre Dame.
100%. But they all need to show up. Every one of those guys needs to show up on Saturday in order for this to be a game.
Yeah. I'm not saying you don't have to give those guys attention, but it can't all be about them.
Yeah, right. Because other guys will hurt you. No doubt about that.
Yeah. 2 for travel. Thoughts on Freeman's game management and if Golden being on the sideline will help. That's curious. I hadn't really thought. Now, Al Golden was on the sideline as a position coach the last few years in the NFL. He said he's going to be on the sideline. Maybe that's part. Now, they all have headsets and stuff like that, but maybe that could be part of it, because Marcus Freeman has said, brought him in. He's got head coaching experience and all that stuff. I don't know. The game management thing is just, quite honestly, it's going to be a work in progress, because
absolutely.
You only get it by experience, and we're going to all find out together. It wasn't horrible in the Fiesta Bowl, but there are obviously spots that you can pick apart and say, maybe you should have done this, so that's what he has spent time, as we've talked about before, in the film room, looking at last 4 minutes of each half. How would I react to this? Right. And, seeing how other teams are reacting in those situations. So he spent time on it, but still the only way that you're going to know, and the only way he can do it, is just by doing it.
Completely agree. No, and I like the fact that he's made a point. That's a point of emphasis for himself, is to watch all these games, the last 5 minutes, or, different scenarios, and what would you do? And I mean, he's doing his homework, but you can do all the homework you want, but there's nothing like being in the game action with all the scenarios floating through your head and having to make those decisions on the fly. That's going to take time. I mean, it's going to take time. And that's every coach learns from their game time decisions. Are they all going to be right? Probably not, to be honest with you. We hope they are. We hope they're right when it matters, right? But we don't know. And it's going to take some time for him to really come into his own as a decision maker on the sideline as a head coach. As far as the whole Al Golden thing being on the sideline, I think that's neither here nor there. I think he's more on the sideline because that's where he wants to be as a defensive coordinator. That's where he's comfortable. And I think that's why that decision was made. As far as, Marcus Freeman needing him, I fully anticipate those two talking to each other about game situations. Fully anticipate it. They don't need to be together on the sideline to make that happen. He could be up in the box. It doesn't make a difference. You've got the headsets and all that.
And the way they're doing it is they've got like Golden's going to be on the field, so like Laurinaitis will be up in the
Right.
booth. His counterpart at that, and
Correct.
like O'Leary will be up in the booth, and so his counterpart would be that kind of thing.
Right.
There's going to be one or the other
Right.
for all those different
Which
position
makes
groups
perfect sense. I
defensively.
mean,
Yeah.
look, Marcus Freeman is going to count on Al Golden at times during games. I absolutely expect that to be the case. We just won't. I don't think we'll necessarily see the two of them huddled up together.
Well, see, and that's part of it too. And I've said this before. Like, it's easy to sit here and second guess decisions in a football game, but the bottom line is these decisions happen in 40-second intervals that are
Right.
continuous throughout the game. You've been on a football sideline as well as a baseball bench. It's a little bit. Baseball is obviously a different pace. Yeah, right,
for sure.
right. But again, in football, you've got to make those decisions, and you've got only so much time to make those decisions.
Right.
So
Right.
it's he doesn't have a lot of time to go, ow, what am I going to do? That kind of thing. He's going to have to make some decisions, and again, we're going to find out what that looks like altogether.
Yes, we will. And honestly, being at the game, it's one of the things I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Do I see Al Golden and Marcus Freeman huddling up and talking?
Sure.
I don't think I'm going to. That's my prediction. But that's something I'm going to be watching if I have my eyes on the sideline. Are they talking, when it comes in a timeout situation? Are they going to be, huddled up? Well, we'll see.
Yep. Our buddy Vigo wants to know, would you say we need to take some calculated risks, bro?
Both sides of the ball, the answer is yes. You have to. In a game like this, you absolutely have to. You can't just sit back and let the other team dictate what you want to do. You're going to have to take risks throwing the ball deep. You're going to have to take risks blitzing. You're going to have to take risks playing man-to-man. You're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to take risks, running a reverse or something along those lines offensively. I mean, you're going to have to take risks because it's going to be a high-risk, high-reward type of game.
I would say calculated risks as long as you're not onside kicking when you're up by 11 in the third quarter. Let's just
bingo.
Get that one out of the way.
Yeah, that's not a calculated risk. That's just I don't want to work here anymore.
That's exactly right. Yep. I'm just done with Nebraska. Dino Bambino, is Foskey only going to be highly successful if Riley Mills breaks out? Since if will be double teamed at times, Lacey and Cross will have high volume usage for the first time. There's something to that, but I also think the guy playing next to him, Adam Alola, is going to have something to say about that as well, because of the fact that he is a guy that can draw some double teams as well. And having those two guys playing next to each other and then Mills on the other side, so I don't think it's only Riley Mills. Yeah, if Mills ends up being that guy and he can be that breakout guy, that helps. But Adam Alola playing right there is going to be a big part of that as well.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Completely agree with that. There's other weapons on this defensive line. And look, Isaiah Foskey was the best defensive lineman on last year's team too, and he still had 10 sacks and 6 or 7 strips, right? I mean, he's still going to get his, as the kids like to say. He's still going to get his stats. There's no doubt about it. He's still going to affect games. But when it's a team sport, you need other guys to step up. I mean, that's just the tall and the short of it when it comes to a game like football. So I fully anticipate Jason stepping up. I think Justin is going to step up. Yes, they play the same position, but they'll be on the field at the same time, maybe on third down, that type of thing. And Riley Mills is poised to have a breakout season. I don't know what breakout season, what that necessarily is defined as, but man, has he looked good in practice. I mean, that he is like an Adonis. I mean, he is a specimen for what you want as a strong side defensive end. So he's going to have Ohio State's going to have their hands full with both ends for Notre Dame.
Yeah, totally agree. Sparkling Swan, what's the media reception if Notre Dame beats Ohio State, and would they be number one in the polls?
I do not think they'll be number one in the polls because Alabama will have something to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
The media reception will be hilarious, frankly, because all of the haters for Notre Dame will be doing a 180 talking about how good this team is. That's what's going to happen. And now there'll still be your staunch haters that'll just say it was a fluke and Ohio State lost the game and, all of those different things.
Yeah, because if there are the turnovers, well, it's not because Notre
Right.
Dame was great. It's because
Right.
Ohio State made all these mistakes.
They didn't force those turnovers. Ohio State gave them the football or, something along they'll find their excuses. But you're going to see a lot of the mainstream media who didn't know anything about this team, who still thinks Jarrett Patterson's playing center. You'll have all of those people completely turn it and be like, "Oh, this is a top 2 team. This is a playoff team." All of these different things. So it's when things like this happen, I just like to sit back and watch because that's where it gets fun to me, is watching all these guys backpedal.
I agree. And, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have to eat some crow, including the mouth of the South down there. It's like maybe you get him to just totally shave that whole thing off. But he should put that up as a wager this week. I will shave my whole head. It's not a very good Feinbaum impersonation, but you know what I'm getting at. There's just a lot of people are going to have to eat some crow. I don't think they'll be number one either, because
right.
Alabama will have something to say about that, but it'll be a huge win.
Absolutely. And look,
they can pull that off.
Notre Dame needs to be in the top 4 at the end of the season. That's the goal, period. Yep. If they're number 1, great. If they're number 2, 3, or 4, I don't care. As long as they're in the top 4, that's all I care about. And this obviously, if they win this game, big if, but if they win this game, that will put them in a good position to be in the top 4 when it's all said and done.
Right. All right, Vince. Next question from Brian. I agree with tackling. Way too many guys slipping off guys. How many tackles for loss did Notre Dame lose last year? Notre Dame got in the backfield and then got nothing for it. Yeah, I mean, that was a major thing last year.
No doubt.
Missed tackles. And that's, again, this is something that we have no way to gauge because we didn't see anybody take it to the ground in the 2 times that we got to go to practice. So what is live tackling going to look like? Big question.
And that's the thing about the game as it is right now. There's just and it's not just at Notre Dame, it's across the board. There's just not as much tackling during the preseason as there used to be because everybody's afraid of injuries and concussions and all, the science of it. And, I get it. They're tackling big dummies. They're tackling big circle dummy, the donuts, all of these different things. They're working on their form and all of that. Look, Notre Dame was missed tackles away from being undefeated. There's no doubt in my mind. And they were missed tackles away from winning the Oklahoma State game, the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, they had opportunities to put Oklahoma State in 3rd and longs, and they just couldn't do it. They could not bring guys down in the backfield. That was a problem. Hopefully that problem has been rectified. I can't sit here and say, yep, they got it all figured out. Now, Al Golden's there. He's the one showing them how to do it. It's going to be great. I can't say that. We're going to have to see. And I guarantee you it's a point of emphasis because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that was a problem last year, and that put them in some not so good positions when it comes to down and distance.
Bill wants to know what Notre Dame player will deliver the biggest hit in this game. I mean, defender, he says. You can't say Estime.
I'm going to go with Brandon Joseph.
I thought you might.
I've seen him lay the wood a little bit in the spring, not so much in the fall because, again, they're not really doing that. He's a heat-seeking missile. If he sees something, he's coming downhill, look out. Brandon Joseph will lay the wood.
Yeah, see, I'm trying to think of like who else it could, because like usually you don't see the defensive lineman laying it out like that. I'll go with Maris Leofau because he's been out for a year. He's ready to go. He's kind of chomping at the bit a little bit. So I'm going to go with Leofau in this one. I think he brings a big hit in this game.
I've got a second choice too. And this is way off the map. Junior Tuihalamaka is going to lay the wood at some point during this game. If he gets in on defense, which is, I don't know if he is, but that boy, when he comes downhill as that middle linebacker, Travion Henderson's going to feel the wrath of number 44. I think he lays the wood at some point.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one on reserve. I snuck this in here a second ago. Michael, are you going to do an Irish jig if Notre Dame beats Ohio State?
I don't know if anybody wants to see that per se, but I'll tell you what, I'll be in a hotel room in Columbus. I'll do it. Absolutely. That'll be one of the first things. I'll just tune in. That'll be the first thing I'll be doing is the Irish jig because I will be on cloud 9 if that happens. Tune into the postgame show, people. Either way, no matter what happens in this game, but if Notre Dame wins, you're going to I probably won't even remember the post-game show. I'll just be so elated.
Jeff says it's been promised a lot over the prior 2 seasons, and I think you can go back more than 2 seasons. But do you think we will see more 2-back sets this game and the season as a whole?
The short answer is yes. I do think we are going to see more, but I think the reasoning for it is a couple different fold, right? So I think Tommy Rees, wants to do more 2-back sets anyway. I think that's kind of the way he wants to go about doing some things and some formational shifts and things of that nature. But it's also because of the depth at wide receiver or lack thereof. And I think the way that you cover up some of that is because you go with the 2-back set and you can motion a guy out to the slot. You can do some different things. So I think it's out of necessity, but I also think Tommy Rees wants to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And, like the last practice we were at, I think we talked about this last week. We saw Audric Estime and Chris Tyree on the field quite a bit together. And there were times where neither one of them was even in the backfield. They were both split out. So I think we will. I think we're going to see 21. I think we're going to see 12. And again, it's about the mismatches they can cause. And, because Ohio State's going to have 3 safeties out there. So what's Tommy Rees going to do to kind of counter that? Yeah. What are some options that he has at his disposal? And I think the multiple personnel packages can really, you talk about the defense trying to keep the offense off balance. I think Tommy Rees can do that with some of those personnel packages that he can throw out there as well.
Agreed. I like I said, I'm really looking forward to possibly seeing some 22 personnel out there. I think that could be a lot of fun.
It's funny because Jess and I, we talked about 22 last week, and obviously that is not, that is like a fairly archaic personnel grouping, 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. It's like I go back to my 70s Cowboys and I can remember some of those 2-back sets. But sure. That's when you were, that's when you had that straight up pro style where you've got 2 running backs side by side and the quarterback, and then you've got a tight end here and you got a tight end over here, and a couple of wide receivers out there. But I definitely think that's another group. And again, like you talk about mismatches, I think that's a group that you could see with these guys because, and part of it is because all the running backs can catch the ball. So
right, exactly.
And there are multiple tight ends who can catch the ball as well as block. And like going back to, we were talking about the rushing stuff earlier. I really think this is a game where for Notre Dame, if things are going right, like you could see both Buckner and Estime, up around 80 yards apiece. And it's 160 total yards right there.
Right there. And you add a little bit in from Logan Diggs and, absolutely. I think that's very doable. Even in a loss, I think that's actually very doable because I do think they're going to put an emphasis on running the ball. So I do think that's very, very plausible.
Tommy Guns 44 scenario. Ohio State's up by 3 to 7 points with all the momentum, set to receive the second half kickoff. Dare to try an onside kick? Good choice or bad, regardless of outcome of kick. Can't say, depends on if it works.
No, because it's still a ball game. I am not confident enough to because you have to think about worst case scenarios if you're a coach, right? Worst case scenario is you onside kick it and you give them the ball at the 40-yard line.
Yes.
I do not want to give Ohio State the ball up 1 possession with only 60 yards to go. This is too dynamic of an offense. I would much rather kick it out of the back of the end zone, have them start the ball at the 25 and have to go 75 yards. I realize that's only a 15-yard difference. Doesn't matter. Make them go as far as you possibly can. Make them work for their points. I am not kicking an onside kick at that point. Their offense is just too stinking good.
Couldn't agree more. Every time they have the ball, you got to make them go as far as possible, as long as possible.
Absolutely. You have to. Yep. And this is a game where the field position is going to be very, very important. So, John Sott, the punter, the McPherson, the kicking game, the kickoff man. It's going to be extremely important for field position. You've got to make Ohio State go the length of the field every time they get the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we were talking about calculated risks earlier. Onside kick is not one that I like. There are plenty of other calculated risks that you can take. David wants to know how many times Brian needs to yell, "That's what I'm talking about," for Notre Dame to pull this victory out.
Well, he won't be yelling because he'll be in the press box, and there's no yelling in the press box. We get reminded of that all the time, and I'm sure Sean has some deep-seated bruises from the many years of us sitting next to each other. Yes, and punching him in the shoulder. Yeah, so he's not going to be yelling a bunch, but he's going to have to at least think it probably 4 or 5 times, I would say, for Notre Dame to win.
Yes, I agree with that as well. All right, we're running low on questions, so if anyone has any that they want to slip in, like you've been thinking about trying to get one in.
We still got rapid fire, baby.
Well, we do. Benjamin wants to know, who is your MVP of the game for the Irish?
This is going to sound like such a softball answer, but if Notre Dame wins this game, it's got to be Tyler Buchner. I feel like he's going to have a ball game for Notre Dame to win. If they score 35 points, I feel like he's going to be responsible for about 28 of them. Whether he's running it in himself or he's throwing the ball or whatever. If they're going to win, it's got to be Tyler Buchner. I know that's maybe a cop-out answer. Maybe they want me to be more creative, but I just feel like it's got to be Buchner if they're going to win this game.
I mean, if we're predicting, it's got to be that as well. The only other way is, like we were talking about, if they're +3 in turnovers. The only other way is if, like, some defender, like, forces a couple of fumbles or comes up with a couple of interceptions or, has a pick 6 and another interception, something along those lines, whether it's Brandon Joseph or a linebacker or something like that. I completely agree. For Notre Dame to win, like, this is not going to be a low-scoring slugfest.
Right.
Notre Dame, we said one of the questions right off the top, how many points do they have to win? I think it starts with 35. And if Notre Dame's going to score 35 points, it'll help if the defense obviously can give them the ball a couple of times in some short field situations. But Tyler Buchner is going to have a big game. They're not going to score 35 points without Tyler Buchner having a big game. So I'd have to go with him. Yep. All right, we got a chance for a couple of more. Salty wants to know, have you demanded that students respect my authority?
In so many words. I told the entire population of the school, which is about 3,600 kids, to punch my son in the hallway. Hey, if you see my kid, give him a little, so he didn't really appreciate that. But
yeah. On that subject, Tommy wants to know, Vinny D, the dean, what's the difference between dean of students and principal?
So hierarchy, you've got principal, you've got assistant principals, you've got deans, then teachers and students. So right there at the bottom rung of the admin ladder, basically. So I get to be in all the important meetings, but I'm the one that nobody hears from. How about that?
Sounds good to me. Will this team be better than last year's team?
It's funny that because I've been thinking about that actually a lot recently. So what were they, 11-1 last year, 11-2 by the end of the year? I think this team could be better all around and maybe have a worse record. I think that's a possibility. I did predict Notre Dame to be 11-1, but their schedule is much more difficult this year than it was last year. Yeah. Depending on what happens in the bowl game, all of those different things. I think it's definitely possible that this team could be better, but the record could be worse. We'll see how that shakes out, but I do think this team could be better. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you are in part a product of who you play. It's not just you. It's also a matter of who you play. Yeah. The schedule is a bit tougher this year. It's a 13th ranked schedule in the nation. And Brian is saying easy schedule is why Notre Dame went 11-1 last year. I mean, I wouldn't call it cupcake, but it definitely was not as hard as what we thought it was going to be.
Right.
I think going in.
No doubt.
Yep. Vince, I just want you to know.
Oh yeah. What do you I was gonna say, do you want me to keep starring stuff, or are we good?
I think we're probably good at
Okay.
this
All right,
point.
cool.
The questions seem to have kind of run out here. Let's do one from Tyler. If you have a 5-star recruit as your child, how do you handle his recruitment, and how would you help him pick a school?
That's you've been through the recruiting process, so you can
Yeah, but
definitely.
not with a 5-star.
Well, no, not with a 5-star. Now, that's granted, not with a 5-star. But I think you look at it a couple of different ways. Number one, this is an opportunity. This is a part of his life that he'll never have happen again. And I think you have to take advantage of that. I would encourage my son to take all 5 visits. I would also encourage him to, we would do, a college tour. Hey, hop in the car. Let's do a bunch of unofficials. Like I would want him to get the full experience, visit as many schools as possible,
Yes.
see what it's like. Now, once he makes his decision, you shut it down. And I would shut it down. We're not taking any more calls. We're not doing anything else. And I would be very clear about that with all of the schools once the recruiting is over, right? But I would really, really want him to jump into this thing and take advantage of it, see different parts of the country, see different programs, meet different coaches, because you just don't know. You know what I mean? So let's pretend that it's actually my son, right? We grew up around Notre Dame. That's what we know. I don't know what it's like to walk on campus at Alabama or Clemson or Georgia or USC or any of those other places. I would encourage him to do all of that. And then I would make sure that he gets on as many campuses as absolutely possible. And I would try to keep him as mentally grounded as possible, because it's very easy to, your ego to expand and all of that stuff. I would do my best to keep that tamped down. You know what I mean?
I agree with everything that you said. I would, thing that I've always encouraged my son to do is think for yourself. You need to learn to make decisions
Right.
on your own. I'll be here to, like if you have questions, you need advice on something, you can ask me. But just everything you said, take all those visits, talk to all those people, process it all. If you need someone to bounce it off of, then we can bounce it off of it. But then, as you said, take all the time you need. But if you are going to announce a commitment, even though it is just verbal, if you're going to announce a commitment, you're going to stay committed. You're not going to change your mind down the road. Take all the time that you need to make the decision. But once you say you're committed, you're going to stay committed.
100%.
That's the biggest thing.
And I think that's about being a man of your word. And that's not a knock on any of the recruits that are out there or anything. But for my family, for me, that's about being a man of your word. You tell a coach that you're going to do something, then you're going to do it. And that's how I would raise my son. That's how I would want to be treated if I was a coach. And that's how I would go about it. I would just kind of be that guy in the shadow in the background, make sure all the right questions get asked, all of those different things, and then just make an intelligent decision. And a lot of that, to be honest with you, and I know I'm kind of rambling at this point, but a lot of it would have to do with academics as well. My son's a high academic student. Your son was a high academic student. Football doesn't last forever. Soccer doesn't last forever. Whatever the sport may be, academics is super important. You've got to be able to have a degree you can fall back on.
Agreed. Quinn was asking, did we see his Desmond Howard question earlier? I accidentally unchecked the star, and so it slipped out of the queue. We did have it started up and ready to go. He was asking about Desmond Howard's college football playoff picks. Jesse and I talked about this in rapid fire last night. Hilarious. It's really like it's just clown show. Like if you want to be taken seriously as a college football analyst, you can't come at me with what was it like Michigan, Baylor, Pittsburgh. I can't remember what the fourth one was, but it was like another off the wall, team that he had. Yeah, I did say Pitt.
Yeah,
I know Pitt, Baylor, and Michigan were 3 of them, but it's just it
was ridiculous. It was
total
just like
joke.
He reached his hand into a sack with all the names on it and just pulled out 4. Like it made absolutely zero sense what he said, and obviously it's clickbait. It's ridiculous. I almost feel like he's like, you know what? Let's see how ridiculous I can be and how much press we can get off of
Texas A&M. Texas A&M was the other one.
It's also a joke, but whatever.
Yeah. Lance wants to know, do you think the new defensive coordinator will make the Ohio State D-line improved enough to be able to stop the run and get pressure against Notre Dame's offensive line, which I expect to be much more improved from the jump? We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. That's The only position coach that they kept was the defensive line coach, and they had a very average defensive line last year. Ohio State did. Now they're going to play deeper. I know they've talked about they want this defensive line to be disruptive, and they want to try to confuse and disrupt and all these different things up front. I think it's a really good question, and I just, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is right now. It sounds like they think they're going to be better, but let's not confuse Jim Knowles with Buddy Ryan. This ain't the 46 defense,
right?
And he's not the king of the world. There are guys like it seems like Don Brown comes to mind. A few years back, like everyone, this defense, and it's he's a good defensive coordinator. Yeah, he has more talent than some of the other stops that he's been at, like Duke and Oklahoma State, but it's also, from what I understand, a fairly complicated defense. So getting that going early on, especially in an opener like this against another quality team, I think that could potentially be a challenge for them.
No doubt. And I'll be the first one to admit I'm happy if Ohio State's going to be on Notre Dame's schedule. I'm happy it's game 1 and not game 11.
Yeah.
Because by then the defense should be rolling. I want them fresh out of the gate with a brand new defense and a brand new defensive coordinator and brand new position coaches and all of those different things. That's what I want as a Notre Dame fan, because you have an opportunity to exploit that potentially. They're not going to be a well-oiled machine defensively. They're just not going to be. I don't care what Jim Knowles says in his press conferences about how they're 100%, they're ready to go, or, I was able to install more than I thought. No. Okay, great. But can they execute that under pressure against what I think is going to be a really good offense?
Right.
We'll see. I don't think.
Bobby S. Is J-Pat practicing? Jarrett Patterson practicing?
He was, the last time he was seen with our eyes, he was in a walking boot, and I believe that was Saturday. It was anticipated that he would be out of that boot and practicing this week. Now, we don't have access to practice, so we don't know for sure. I believe that he's been practicing. I fully anticipate him practicing. That was the plan all along. We'll see.
D-Hawk, better chance. Notre Dame beats the Buckeyes or the Baltimore Orioles, make the playoffs as a wild card. I prefer an Irish win. The Orioles are making a push right now. What's crazy is they're making this push since trading Trey Mancini. It's like, where did all this come from? Right? Where was all this when you still had Trey Mancini? But I'm going to give Notre Dame a better chance. I think it is still too far uphill for the Baltimore Orioles. So I'm going to say Notre Dame's got the better chance.
Can I just say that I'm enjoying the White Sox losing all of these games in a row? Just saying. Just throwing it out there.
You won't find any disagreement for me on that one. I just want you to know I've got my new internet tonight.
Oh.
Can you tell the difference at all? Like on your end, does it seem better?
100%. Yes, no question. I didn't think about it until you mentioned it, and yes, it's been 100% better.
All right. Awesome. Well,
look at that.
Driscoll will know that his money is well spent then. He's been telling me he would pay for an upgrade if I could get it. So I finally was able to get it. And so Driscoll's paying for
it. I know that the Cubs suck, and I appreciate that, but it makes me feel better that the White Sox were supposed to be really good, and they're not. That makes me – the Cubs were always supposed to suck. That was never going to – I mean, they were never going to be good this year. So
that's true.
So it just makes me happy that the White Sox are blowing what they – all the expectations that they thought, because they've got a geriatric manager who doesn't know what he's doing.
Yes. That's all fine and good, Vince, but how about some rapid fire?
Oh, I love it. That's part of the show. Let's go.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get to it tonight. And just for those people who say, well, you guys cut it off at an hour, we're going past an hour tonight. We went past an hour. Yeah, we've been going consistently past an hour. Now we haven't blazed to the 2-hour point.
No. But you and I never stop at 7. We always go over. So
yeah,
it's all good.
There's always some overage. Now I think we've got some pretty good ones tonight. So here's what Notre Dame defensive tackle Jason Adamalola from the defensive line said last night. Had a little post-practice media last night, and Adamalola said, quote, "We feel like we're the strongest, most badass mother effers in the country," end quote. My question to you, Vince, do you have any problem with that?
Okay. No is the answer. I have no problem with it, and there's many reasons that I have no problem with it. Number one, I love the fact that the Notre Dame players are actually allowed to speak their mind, and they don't just sound like a bunch of mindless robots out there
Well,
spouting out the same stuff.
now there is a question, like if I set an over under of 1/2, how many more times are we going to get to talk to Jason Adamalola this season? That could be up in the air right now.
I'll take the over.
So,
I'll take the over on it but I do think he'll get talked to about it. Hey, we gotta. But look, he's enthusiastic. He's excited. He has confidence in his group. He has confidence in his team. I love it. I mean, isn't this the swagger that we've been looking for so long from this team? I mean, in the past, it's been a business trip, right? You're not a badass mother effer if this is a business trip, okay? That's not the way they're treating this. They're treating this as, hey, it's us against the world. We're about to go out there and shock some people. I freaking love it.
I love the attitude. I will say that. And I'm not a prude either. Like I could have said, the F word rather than effers, and you know that I've been known to throw a few of those around in my time myself, but we're a podcast, so I could say it, but like we try to keep it clean. So like if you're driving around listening with your kids, they can still listen.
Show.
You don't have to worry about the language and stuff like that. So we're not prudes by any means. Don't get me wrong. I love the attitude because he plays like a bad mother effer, and he's walking it like a bad mother.
Exactly.
Like the Adamalolas, like their game has grown so much just in the last couple of years, and I think it was Justin who was asked about. I can't remember if it was Jason or Justin because they are twins after all. But
never heard that before.
Asked about Isaiah. I think it would have been Justin. He was asked about Isaiah Foskey and how good Foskey is and stuff like that. He's like, I'm just as good as as I say. It's like if you're not going to have that attitude, you have no business stepping foot on the football field. And the fact that he has that attitude, you want a guy who believes, whether he's actually fully capable of it or not. You want a guy who believes that he can go up against anybody on any given day and kick their butt. Yes. And like in Adamalola's case, I do believe that he can kick most of the people's butts who are across the line from him. So, the fact that he's willing to say it again, we'll be on Adamalola watch and see if we get him again this season. I don't think we would if the previous regime was here.
Oh, he'd be a shadow. There's no way. There's no way you'd see him again. None.
Yeah, that's right. Because, as you said, I mean, we have seen these guys coached and overcoached on what to say and what not to say. And, I don't know if they are still doing that, but I guarantee you, we're the strongest, most badass mother effers in the country is not something that any of these media advisors has ever told a college kid. Yeah, you might just want to go ahead and say that,
Right.
But I also like the fact that he didn't direct this at Ohio State. This is about him. This is not bulletin board material by any means. He's just saying this is who we think we are. And he's not saying, we're better than Ohio State. He's not directing anything at Ohio State. He's just saying this is who we think we are. And I love it.
Confidence, man. Love that.
Yep. Fill in the blank. Lou Holtz says he wrote Brian Kelly 8 positive letters when Kelly was at Notre Dame. And then here's the quote from Lou. Quote, I go to the mailbox every day hoping I'm going to find an answer. He never responded to one of them. End quote. This makes Kelly blank.
Exactly who I thought he was. That's what it makes him. Like how I get that you probably get a lot of fan mail and you get a lot of mail and he probably doesn't even open his own mail. Let's be honest, right? He probably has a secretary or something open his mail. And then she probably gives him what's important, whatever. If that's the case, the Lou Holtz letters had better made it on his desk, okay? He's the last guy to win a national championship. He's the most successful coach he's the most recent, most successful coach at the University of Notre Dame that held the same seat that you hold. How could you not respond to his letters when he's actually saying positive things. It's not like he's saying, yeah, you're a dirtbag, you're doing a terrible job, whatever. He said they were positive letters. How do you not respond to that? He should have been flying Lou Holtz in weekly and just having lunch. Just at lunch, whatever. Pick the brain of a guy who has done it. He's been to the mountaintop at Notre Dame. He has done what you are trying to do. How do you not? You don't have to agree with everything he says, but how do you not at least take in that knowledge and show respect for him? It boggles my mind. It absolutely does.
I feel like Lou Holtz is like starting the Reddit thread of spurned grandparents everywhere. It's like, I sent you a Christmas card, but you never wrote back. You never gave me the thank you. But, that's right. And that's kind of what it seems like to me. It's like Lou Holtz is sending, like the Christmas card and $50, and Brian Kelly is just like the spoiled grandkid, and he's like, whatever, I'm going to go do my thing out here. I don't have to write a thank you note. It's like you're freaking Brian Kelly, and it's Lou freaking Holtz. I mean, come on,
right?
You're not going to respond to Lou Holtz because you're going to get into, like you're going to stick your chest out. Like, you don't have to respond to Lou Holtz. I do think it's funny that like it took Lou Holtz this long to, to kind of, it's like maybe he saw Phil Dracovic taking the shots and he's like, I got some stuff too,
I do. I have heard, obviously through the grapevine, that Lou Holtz wasn't overly enthusiastic about Brian Kelly and the way that he didn't really embrace the history and, all that stuff. Right.
Right.
And I think
well documented,
out of respect for Notre Dame, and maybe even a little bit of respect for Brian Kelly, maybe not, he didn't come out and say anything until Brian Kelly was very clear of Notre Dame. Like, his wake is no longer here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Lou Holtz at least strikes me as somebody who has that kind of respect, that he's not going to just throw the guy under the bus while he's still at Notre Dame because
I'm not saying when he was here. I'm saying, like
it took him 8 months to come out.
He could have lobbed this shot right before Christmas last year, for that matter, right before the bowl game.
Yeah, been a Christmas present.
Yeah, true story. I know someone I used to work with who was on one of these commuter flights somewhere in or out of South Bend, and she sat on a plane next to Lou Holtz once several years back. Okay. And so, so they sit down, pleasant enough guy, all this different stuff. All of a sudden, the flight gets in the air, pulls out his little bag, and the tray comes down, and he unwraps his peanut butter and jelly sandwich and goes to town on PB&J.
Because Lou Holtz is old school, man.
That's right. And this has been a while too.
Brings his own sandwich on the plane. I love that.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. Brian Kelly, spoiled brat, doesn't have to send thank you notes to his grandparents. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Okay, Vince, give me 4 Notre Dame freshmen who you are sure will burn their eligibility this season.
So I meant to text you, actually, and I was like, I think we can raise this number a little higher, to be honest with you.
Well, let's just go. Let's see how many we can get to then.
Okay, let's do that. Yeah, that'll be fun. Okay.
Let's just go. We'll go back and forth. You name one, I'll name one.
Oh, okay. Let's have some fun with that. All right.
Okay.
Tobias Merriweather.
Okay. Jaden Mickey.
Okay. Bryce McPherson.
Yeah, good one. Benjamin Morrison.
Very good. I like that one. Excuse me. I'm going to say Eli Raridan.
See, he would have been my next one as well. Because I don't think Holden Stays will, but I think Eli Raridan will for sure.
Yeah.
Because again, I think because, you might not see him a ton early on, but I do think that eventually, because of the skill set that he, I could easily see him. And on Sunday, by the way, in our Countdown to Kickoff show, we're going to predict what we think some of the red zone personnel is going to look like.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that we'll be doing on Saturday's show. But yeah, so I like Eli Raridan, if nothing else, because of that red zone. See, so we've got to 5 right there.
You did.
And that was, the 5 was easy. Now I'm trying to think beyond that.
The only other one that I think is a good possibility would be Junior Tuihalamaka. I think he's going to get some time on defense, but I also think he's going to get a lot of time on special teams. So I'm going to go with Junior.
He probably would have been my next as well. Early on, I might have thought Jabron Payne, but that was more when Logan Diggs was still injured. And I just think, just kind of listening to Dylan McCullough, in the typical thing with running backs, he's probably not quite there when it comes to pass pro and that kind of stuff. And that could potentially keep him off the field. Now, like if it came to it as a returner and stuff like that, I think there are some other return possibilities though as well. So I think Payne would be just below the bar for me. Like if he were, obviously now if something were to happen to one of these other guys, that would accelerate things.
Sure. But as things stand, everybody's healthy, etc. Yeah, right.
Yep.
I've got one more name that I think has a possibility, and it's Tyson Ford. He was
That's a good one.
He was with the varsity. The last time we were at practice, he didn't change his number to a scout team number. So that leads me to believe that maybe it won't be right away, but I think he could work himself into the rotation.
Could be down the road.
Yeah, based on that. And that could potentially eat up his 4 games. We'll see.
Yeah. Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin shared the team lead with 7 touchdown catches each last year. Over under 10.5 touchdown catches for this year's team leader.
This one's tough for me. I think it's going to be more spread out, to be honest with you. So I'm going to take the under on this one. I'm going to say under, even though I think I may have predicted 10 for Michael Mayer the other day, but it would still be under. It would still be under 10.5.
I think you did.
So I'll take the under.
That's right. I'm going to go under as well because of the fact that I think that probably that 16 to 18 range is what we're looking at in terms of the touchdowns that Tyler Buckner might throw, total this year. Because again, I think he's going to have, 10, 12, maybe even a shade more touchdown runs once they get in the red zone. So that's going to take away from some of those touchdown passes. And just like you said, the fact that it'll be spread out a little bit. I think Mayer is going to end up being the team leader, but I'm going to say in that 8-9 range. Maybe even 10, but not quite 11, 12, I don't think.
Okay.
Tavon Coney and Drew Tranquil combined for 209 tackles back in 2018. Will J.D. Bertrand and Marist Liufau combine for at least that many this year?
I'm going to go with no, but only because I don't think JD is going to play as much as he did last year because there's more depth at linebacker.
Yes.
I think there's going to be a bit of a rotation there. So I think he's not going to be on the field quite as much. I just don't know that they're going to be, I don't know if they're both going to be in triple digits. So that's the hard part for me. So I'm going to say no, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be effective. It just means they're not going to be on the field for as many snaps.
If you go back a year before that as well, Niles Morgan, Tavon Coney, and Drew Tranquil combined for 293 tackles. They each almost had 100. And yeah, I agree. J.D. Bertrand, like you said, like he played the second most snaps on the team last year behind Clarence Lewis. Clarence Lewis had to play the most. J.D. Bertrand was number 2. So it made sense that he had all of those tackles. And I completely agree with what you're talking about. The linebacking group is going to be deeper. Part of the reason Bertrand had to play so many, you didn't have Marist Liufau last year. But that's why I lump them in there together. Like, could they get to that 200, number this year? I agree. I think that they'll be a little bit under that, and you're going to have some other guys contributing. Bo Bauer, I think, is going to be out there more this year than last year.
No doubt. No doubt. And the depth chart, the way it came out, it just reads like they're all going to kind of be rotating around at all the positions together. You know what I mean? So
right, like the fact that Bertrand is listed as the number 2 rover right now.
And Kaiser's listed as the number 2 will, I believe, off the top of my head. It's just they're all subbing for each other. You know what I mean? And so it's like a 4 for 3 kind of a situation is what it feels like. So, I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't surprise me.
Well, then, like you said, you got Tui Alamaka in
Right.
there potentially as well.
Right. And I think he could get some snaps here as the season wears on.
And Prince Collie for that matter. So I think he's going to have some impact as well this year. Okay, fill in the blank. It's blank that Rex Ryan is going to be on the new season of The Amazing Race.
Who's his partner? That's what I want to know.
I guess he's got a golfing buddy who's going to do it with him, is what I read.
Wow. They might be the first one voted off, is really what might end up happening. Although it's going to be comical because they usually get about 2 episodes before anybody gets voted off. And those are going to be 2 entertaining episodes with him on there. There is no doubt about that. No chance of winning. Not much of a chance of advancing past the first couple of episodes. But it's going to be entertaining. I will give it that. It's going to be entertaining.
Don't you have to run on that show sometimes? Like, that's what I can't see. You know, like Rex Ryan, let's get a effing snack, is going to be out there, and he's going to have to, you know, like the plane is going to land. He's going to have to run through the airport and then down the street. He's not going to make it out of the airport. That's right. I don't know how this is going to work.
Right. It's not. And that's why it's going to be funny. I mean, he's going to fall, and we're going to see all kinds of not pratfalls because they're going to be real, but we're going to see them all on video, and it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be funny. So guess what? I'll be tuning in for the first episode because of this.
Do you remember when Jimmy Johnson did Survivor a few years back?
No, I don't.
Yeah. I think he did halfway decent on
Really?
that. He made it for a little while, but you know, Survivor's obviously a little bit different. Didn't you and I, like a few years back, weren't we talking about trying to get on The Amazing Race together?
Should, for that matter.
I think we should give it a shot.
I think you and I could be good. I'm just saying.
I think so too. I think I remember like going to their website. You have to put together a video and some different stuff like that. We could be like, they're Notre Dame podcasters from South Bend, Indiana.
Well, and I'll tell you what, our arguments would be epic. Like I can see that already.
That's right. Because we don't argue, but you know, that much. But like, throw us into those situations where like food is more scarce and sleep is scarce, and it's like you got to make decisions. It's like, all right, Sean, just leave me alone.
Oh, that would be epic. That would be fantastic. That would be enough a reason to put us on that show all by itself.
Absolutely. I think it would be. We might have to run down that application process.
Doubt.
It's one of those shows. It's like these shows just keep going on and on forever. It's like, oh yeah, that show.
Right.
So I haven't watched it in a while. Do you still watch it at all?
You know, I watched the last season because there were some podcasters on there, or YouTubers or whatever, that my wife really likes, the Holderness family, and so we watched it for them, and they ended up winning the whole thing. But so yeah, I watched the very most recent season.
Tyler said, I hope Mark Sanchez is his partner, actually. I don't know. Has there ever been a butt fumble on The Amazing Race?
Well, isn't Rex Ryan the one who had like a foot fetish too? Like,
that sounds right.
That sounds right. I don't know why I think that, but how does that not come up? You know what I mean? Like, there has to be all kinds of nonsense that's going to come up here.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Oh boy.
All right. So I might tune in just to see Rex Ryan run at some point.
100%. It's happening.
See if he explodes in the process. Good luck, Rexy.
Yeah, good luck.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Tomorrow night, again, I've got the an Ohio State beat writer coming on. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about Ohio State and this matchup coming up Saturday. Marcus Freeman has got his noon Zoom conference tomorrow. They're not the in-person press conferences. Right. So we'll see if anything comes out of that. We'll start the show talking about anything that comes out of the Freeman press conference at noon.
That was great.
And then we have the Ohio State guy, and then Bobby will be on for some rapid fire. And of course, don't forget, we've got Countdown to Kickoff coming up Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.
10 bells.
That's right, baby. We'll be on with a pregame show, Notre Dame and Ohio State, and then the whole gang will, with the exception of me, will be there after the game, late Saturday night / early Sunday morning. Somehow we're going to try to sleep and then see if we can get back into South Bend Sunday. So you can do another show Sunday night.
Can't wait. It's going to be great. I'll be watching film the whole way home.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks as always for joining us here tonight. Don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review, and all that good stuff. Always great to be talking some Notre Dame football leading up to a game. It is almost here. It's almost
Yes.
here, Vince.
Yes. And somebody said it finally the talk is over. We get to actually watch the game. It's coming. Couple more days. We'll be there. Couple more days. Just hold on, people.
We're
We're coming.
almost there. We're almost there. All right. Talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.